arc initially is called Chakra Cloak, which is 0 tails. But by the end of the fight, when Sasuke enters like Curse Mark 2, Naruto uses 1 tail, which is like significantly more powerful, I guess. It doesn't really provide anything until Shippuden, though, to have multiple tails. Because in Shippuden, having more tails means Naruto can cast like freaking Rasengans from inside each tail and stuff.
That's when he's just absolutely broken. Yeah.
So it actually becomes like absurd. But the series is not perfect. It copies a lot of Hunter x Hunter early on. So what made the series popular was mostly just Hunter x Hunter copying. And people liked the idea of Naruto or like ninjas casting like jutsus. Like that idea was just strong enough to carry.
Yeah.
And I would say it's one of the first series that I call junk food anime. That really took off.
Junk food anime? Why do you call it that?
Because it goes with like hyper fixating on all the major tropes of what make anime shonen series popular. So it's like, he is an underdog. He has a rival with exceptional skill. He learns secret technique from Jiraiya. He's hated by everybody, but also there's an intelligent guy who has intelligence and beats everybody with his smarts. And there's also a guy who likes bugs, a guy who likes dogs. Dogs are cute. Look at this puppy. Like, it's so injected with, like, that stuff. Now, that's not to say that that's bad, but it is very, like everything about it is like as you expect, right? As the hard teacher that actually loves you. It has like everything. And it dials it up to like 11. It's like, I have an eye technique that lets me copy all your techniques. It's like, what? I can see through all your moves. They just do that. I summoned 100 clones of myself and I punched you to death. It's like, okay. And I think that's good because it's funny and it works. Dialing everything up to 11 worked. And that's why I call it junk food. Because you're not supposed to take most of it very seriously. Like, Kabuto literally pulls out ninja info cards. Like, they could just be information he has. Why does he make little cards out of them? Right? Like, it's clearly to make it, closer to Hisoka when he pulls out the, like, things in Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah.
But I would still say, the series is very much like dial everything to 11. Like, if you compare it directly with Hunter x Hunter, the thing it's stealing from for the Chunin exams.
Yeah.
I think it's very fair to say, like, if you look at them, Hunter x Hunter goes with a little bit more boots to the ground, a lot more murdery, and a lot more, like, severity and about skill and patience. But in Naruto, they do go for the gruesome factor. For some reason, they went way too gruesome in the Forest of Death. And they dialed it back massively after that. Because Forest of Death, they're like, fucking people are breaking people's hands like slot machines behind their back. And
yeah, I know. And like, Gaara just murders all those people.
In the Village of Rain, he grabs all of them and like sand coffins them and blood flies everywhere.
Yeah.
And in the Chunin exam, Shino puts bugs in the sound man Zeku's arms, and it makes his arms blows his arms off. Yeah. And then Naruto goes, my bad. After that, after it stopped copying Hunter x Hunter and being as gruesome as Hunter x Hunter, it stopped like being gruesome.
I know. I kind of hate how shonen anime can be so like not dark sometimes.
Yeah, it's like either it goes all the way. I think Shonen Jump has just taken a step back from that. They're like, look, if you're a seinen, go for it. But if it's a shonen, we want it to be a bit more like universally approachable.
Yeah.
So they try to go a little less in that direction unless you use the cheat codes. The cheat codes are things like Jujutsu Kaisen uses, where it's like, these guys are demons, so if I blow them up into gore, is that okay? It's like, yeah. Like, on paper, that's fine, because it's a demon, not a human. And so you can kind of get away with a little bit more if you argue that it's a demon doing it.
I'm trying to think of other stuff that does... Like, I know there's a few shonen that are, like, really dark, surprisingly, even still, but...
A lot of them are not by Shonen Jump.
Oh, it's like Young Jump and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff that like slides next to, or like Square Enix's magazine. Like Full Metal Alchemist is by Square's magazine.
Yeah.
So it's like it can be ruthless, but contributing people's lives and stuff. So like it's more ruthless. Or Attack on Titan, which is not Shonen Jump either, technically. Gets away with being way more like serious. But most of the series I would just loosely say is just unfair to call them shonen at all. Like I'm on the fence that if it becomes like super gory, bloody, crazy, you just call it a seinen and it's a day. Like
yeah, I'm a big fan of a lot of seinen too, so
yeah, like seinen just means for 17 and up basically, or for 16 and up or something.
Yeah, it's like demographics. That's all it is.
Yeah, shonen means teen boy.
Yeah, it's like shoujo and josei.
Yeah. Because sho is the age group, and then
yeah,
nen is boy basically, and jo is girl. So josei is like, sei being like adult, I guess. And then jo, girl. Okay. So I think like people like to say like shonen series do these tropes, and it's like we use the term shonen because it's like popularized there, but that's just an age demographic. What we kind of refer to as the shonen genre is different from the demographic. It's sort of like it's the equivalent of like pop music.
Yeah.
Like it's wildly changing, but it's like, so what we're actually referring to a lot of the time is whatever's pop culture at the time, which is like, okay, that's the Jujutsu Kaisen and blah blah. Even if they say seinen on them, people go, well, that's whatever's the pop of anime right now. So, but yeah, usually they have a really similar plot. But that's why I say Naruto is kind of the popular junk food anime, because before then you didn't have a lot of junk food shonen series. Like they were either like cheesy, which is what we refer to a lot of the 90s series as, like kind of campy or cheesy, or they were like edgy. And you usually didn't have like, or they're just normal, right? Like Bleach is pretty normal. There's like a little edge to it, but not that much.
Oh yeah. I mean, I stopped reading after he loses his powers the first time, but
that's pretty normal. A lot of people understand that like Aizen was the antagonist, and so they're fine with just ending it there. I don't blame anybody for ending it right there. I think it's very expected.
Yeah,
and it doesn't
I don't know
help
why
that
they
the arc
kept going, but
I think ironically, I think the arc he eventually got to was one of his best.
Yeah.
But I do think that people at the time couldn't handle it, and I don't think I think that's why I'm like kind of happy that they waited so long between making a new anime. Because it gave people time to flush their system of all of the weird toxicity that existed with Bleach at the time. Like a lot of people were like, I love Aizen. Yeah. And then once they finished with Aizen, they were like, I fucking hate Bleach. And it was like weird.
I definitely did that when I was younger. I won't lie. It wasn't even, it was just because, like, why make him all these different things, you know? Like, now he's all of a sudden a Quincy, too, like...
That's what happened. So a lot of people were like, this doesn't track. And it's like, well, it does, but Kaikubo's not a god writer. His first major series was basically Bleach. And so he didn't write in enough good story lore early enough on, unlike like Oda with One Piece. Oda did bake in things from earlier on. Even then, though, Sabo is only first kind of truly mentioned unless you are one of those people who says Ace's tattoo is the reason why Sabo is the way he is for like 7 billion years. It's like, that's fine. That's like a thing. But the first time Sabo is inferred to is in Marineford.
Yeah. Which
is really late to bring up a character from Luffy's childhood. And so some people are pretty upset about how late Sabo is inferred on because it feels like they're just replacing the character of Ace. Usually the biggest safeguard that Oda has against that is that he gave Ace a tattoo where it says AS crossed out CE.
Yeah.
And the crossing out of S is supposed to be like a Sabo tattoo where he effectively like had a tattoo for putting Sabo's name.
Yeah.
And then Sabo died, and he couldn't go through with it, so he crosses out the S and then he puts Ace over it. So that way he can like kind of jokingly excuse that he just misspelled Ace, his own name, which is kind of unbelievable, but whatever. Like, that's like the indirect, like, oh, haha, yeah, it's like, I'm just making a joke. But the reality is, like, S being crossed out is enough of a reason for it to be Sabo. And in fact, Oda later drew a panel confirming this. There's a cover art he did where it shows all three of them alive as adults. And in that sketch, Ace's arm just says Ace with ACE. It doesn't have the S with the cross.
Weird.
So Oda did basically confirm then that the S with the cross out was because Sabo's death. And so that gives him like a chain link to episode 200.
Yeah.
Where he's like, look, I planned him back in episode 200. It's like, I can't say no to that. Also, because when Ace and Luffy make the promise where they drink the sake together.
Yeah.
That promise is a reference to the Three Kingdoms. And there's three kingdoms in the Three Kingdoms. And the Shu forces who drink sake under the tree are three people. Liu Bei and Zhuge Liu, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei, yes. They all do. And then, yeah. So that happens in the story. So when Luffy and them drink, it seems odd there isn't a third person. In the manga panel, there is a tiny sliver of a third plate there, third cup.
Yeah.
And it's just slightly offset. You can't see who's there. But there are three people, technically, it's implied, during that, memory. The problem is that that scene isn't that early in the series. But it is there, so he had been teasing it for a while, and because the actual source material implies three people as well, I think it's fair to say that he had it planned. I think Tite Kubo's problem is he had nothing seemingly planned, so it comes off as stupid when that happens. If early enough in the series it was like Ichigo, something's weird with your anatomy, right?
Yeah.
Then that would be fine. Or if Ken, is that his name? I don't remember. Uryu's father.
Oh, yeah.
If he had more of a clear purpose in Ichigo's life, I could understand it. But you can make the same argument as the S with the cross out, that the reason why Uryu is so closely tied with Ichigo is actually because his parents are watching Ichigo because he's part of the Quincy clan indirectly.
Yeah.
Which gives enough leniency, but I think back then, people could not give Tite Kubo that. They refused to. They're like, nope, you didn't plan this. You made it up. Because unfortunately, that's how people look at the Fullbring arc as well. They look at it as him just making something up because Shonen Jump wants him to keep writing Bleach.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that he was padding time because he did the Fullbring arc, and then he was I swear he wrote the Fullbring arc quickly so that he had more time to write the real arc he was working on. Which was the 1,000 Year Blood arc. The one that's currently airing or whatever.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know too much about it.
But it's an arc focusing on the Quincy's. So it's I think he needed more time to do that, but the Fullbring arc kind of poisoned everybody's mouth. And I think Tite Kubo was fuck. I didn't mean to make this I basically meant to make this as a somewhat of a filler arc. Kind of like how he had done with, or the anime had done with Bound and stuff. But usually mangas don't create filler arcs.
Yeah.
So he was in a weird spot where he's well, I made a filler arc. It has some mild importance to the story, but realistically it's just meant to give you more understanding of what would Ichigo do if he had no powers. Instead of just saying, yeah, Ichigo just chilled for about a month and then got his powers back, they wanted to give what would Ichigo do to get powers? And so they kind of put him in this very dire situation. But I think unfortunately the execution of it's pretty weak, but again, I give the argument that Tite Kubo is just stalling. And manga companies at the time are just ruthless as fuck.
Yeah.
And they don't let you stop doing work. It's much better nowadays. Like Oda gets to do 3 chapters and then take a 1-week break every week or every month. Like he gets a week off. So they're significantly less severe than they used to be, where it was like every week now, don't stop.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. But I do think Tite Kubo is fantastic. Obviously, his art style is very pretty. He had great fashion sense with his characters. His characters are cool looking. They're hype. A lot of them are just really cool. They have really cool abilities.
Yeah, it was always my favorite of like the Shonen series back when it was the original Bleach like story.
Yeah.
It just was so much cooler than everything else, you know?
Yeah, so Tite Kubo's ability to make something cool is unprecedented, especially at his time.
Yeah.
And so I think he was very good at that. I think what ruined him is explicitly that one Fullbringer arc damaged his credibility. And then when you damage your credibility, now everything that you say you planned from before sounds like a lie.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, you have this Fullbringer arc. He's like, no, the Fullbringer arc's to stall, and like, Ichigo gets his Bonkai or his powers back. It's like, yeah, but that just sounds stupid. At that point, like, why even do that? Like, just give Ichigo his powers back immediately. It's like, you don't understand the working conditions are horrible, okay? I'm sure he wanted a break after Bleach. He was probably asked for one after Aizen. And they were like, no. Or your numbers are as high as they've ever been. It's like, yeah, but it's the end of a big arc. It's going to be really bad. And I think they were like, fuck it, do it. And then he did the Fullbring arc, and so many people dropped off that Shonen Jump delisted his anime. Like, his anime stopped after Fullbring.
Really?
So, like, clearly it did bad. Yeah. The anime stopped after the Fullbringer arc, and they didn't start it back until this year.
Yeah, I don't even know what else really has happened in the story since then.
I would recommend reading Thousand Year Blood War or watching the anime. The anime I've heard is really, really good. So, like, because, you know, it's got modern animation budget.
Yeah, strangely enough, I did watch the Bleach anime even for the original, too.
Yeah. I do think that it had one of the better levels of animation at the time. Because if you look at another series that I love that unfortunately is fucked by the time it was made, which is Katekyo Hitman Reborn.
Oh, I love it, yeah. I didn't watch it, but I... Yeah.
Yeah, it's damaged a lot by bad animation at the time. And it was one of those series that got fucked over basically just by being too weak animation-wise. And so it didn't get popular enough. But the manga was very good.
Great, yeah.
Yeah. So my argument has always been, like, they've remade series from a while back recently. Like, David Productions did, like, Captain Tsubasa and stuff. I was like, I really hope somebody goes, hey, so Reborn's finished and all that, and we can do a modern anime of it. I just want them to do it. I want them to, like, fuck it, we're gonna remake this series like they did with Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah.
Because Hunter x Hunter had the 1999 anime and then the 2011. So I was just like, please do that for Reborn. I want it so badly. It'll be popular, I promise. But I think with what's coming out right now, they just are like, why would we do that? I think they usually go to that when they feel like there's nothing coming out right now. But right now they actually have a lot of good anime kind of like sitting on the sidelines waiting to be published. So they're kind of like, fuck. So they're less inclined to just keep remaking old stuff. But I hope they would. But Bleach is one of those series that always had really good animation. And so I think modern Bleach just has even better animation. So Thousand Year Blood War is gonna look really good, especially because the manga version of it is rushed.
Yeah.
It was stated that Kubo had to rush a bunch of the fights and arcs because, like, Shonen got, like, on his ass with how many people dropped off the manga. And so he kind of had to rush a little bit to complete it. And I think the manga, I've heard from a couple of people the manga has already fixed some of the holes. Like, they filled them in.
Yeah.
I think Kubo is working with the anime to, like, kind of patch up those things. Like, hey, no, actually this fight should be longer and not 2 seconds. Because there's some really famous fights in Blood War where they just basically, like, skip it. That did happen in the original Arrancar arc as well, where he had to skip some Arrancar fights. Like, do you remember Shinji Hirako actually fights Aizen, and they skip that entire fight?
Yeah. They skip it? Oh, wow.
Well, they did well, they technically skip it even in the manga, in the Arrancar arc. Shinji goes in front to fight Aizen, and then they just say who won, which is Aizen.
Well, yeah.
What I'm saying is, like, that's an example of Tite Kubo, how messed up working with shonen seemed to be. Is like, he would just constantly have to remove entire fights. Because they would be like, no, you can't just have characters fighting for like 50 episodes, like 50 chapters.
I mean,
he's like, but that's what people love. I know, that's what I would say.
Other series do it, I mean...
Usually they have to do it in a tournament arc. The fights aren't happening at the same time. I guess it's considered a taboo to have like 6 fights ongoing at the same time and then to pan over each of them.
Which is what he wanted to do. But...
Yeah. But I think that was the problem, and I think Blood War has the same problem. It's just something that Tite Kubo wants to do because it's more accurate to what's actually happening. What would actually happen is all of them would fly to different fights, and they'd all attack. So it makes sense that he would pan over to each of their fights as they're happening. But I think they didn't like this style earlier on, and Shonen got kind of pissed off about it. I don't know why, but they just did. So, like, Bleach did fall off for a bit, but it had such a fervent fan base that they were like, why do people keep asking about Bleach anime? Like, this doesn't make any sense. They weren't buying Bleach. Like, why do they want it now? 20 years later, or not 20 years, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's what would happen. Yeah, it's like people 10 years, 8 years later or whatever are like, hey, can you please make Bleach? They're like, it's been 8 years. Shut up. And it's like, no, we want it. Fine. That's why I'm hoping they release actual video games for Bleach 2. Because that would be super sick. To be like, yeah, so Koei has actually been working on, like, Bleach Warriors. I'd be like, yes. Give me
I thought they already made some Bleach games, didn't they?
Koei has never made a Bleach game.
Oh, no? What am I thinking of?
There's a Bleach Warriors like that's called Soul Resurrection, but that was made by Sony.
Oh, okay. I thought that was made by Koei.
Nope, it's made by Japan Studio Sony. It doesn't even really play like a Musou game. Like it like visually looks like one because they were copying it. But the actual way it fights is like, it's sort of like how Senran Kagura feels, where it does not feel like Warriors.
Yeah.
It's the same way where it's like you do have square moves, but you don't have square triangle. You have none of that. It's just you have a square combo. You have triangle projectile attacks. And you have circle special moves. That's what it has. So, like, nothing about it is like Warriors outside of the fact that there are a couple enemies on screen. It's just a generic hack and slash. But it's cool because Bleach is cool. But if you replace all the enemies with generic enemies and generic characters that you're playing as, it would be a bad game. It's cool because it's Bleach. And it had a lot of problems, like I said, because, like, the game was, like, kind of whack. Like, a lot of the story in that game doesn't even make sense. Like, it doesn't really even follow the anime outside of Aizen's final fight.
Yeah.
And, like, some of the Arrancar fights. Other than that, it's basically a story that starts with you playing as... Like, Ichigo doesn't even have a normal moveset. He's always in Bankai. Like, he's Bankai Ichigo 100% of the time. And then there's Skull-clad Ichigo, which was for the movie.
Yeah.
And then there's, like... Holified Ichigo, which has its own character. And then there's Final Ichigo, which he used for the final fight. And the only difference with Final Ichigo is that his projectile is bigger. It's about, like, similar size to Ichigo's when Ichigo's in burst mode in that game. It's called Ignition.
Yeah.
But it's like that all the time. But I think the damage on it is a very slightly lower, or the attack speed or something on it slower. So it's not even like a perfect increase. And then when he does his ignition super, he does Mugetsu and then kills himself.
Really?
Yeah, it's good for the speedrun for killing bosses. You just kind of pop it and then the boss dies, so it doesn't really matter if you fall over dead. That game has a system where you can get up to 3 revives baked into every mission. So they don't care if a move kills you.
Yeah, that's strange. I haven't actually played it. I think I watched a run. I think someone did a run for an event. I don't know.
Gotcha. It's probably Mike Solar art.
Yeah. I think there was like a Bleach event.
Gotcha. But the game's pretty cool. Unfortunately, you can't level up in it in the run.
No.
Because opening up the level up screen loses like a minute. Like the actual like level up screen has like an animation for every character you've ever interacted with locking into your menu. And you can't skip it, and it's really long. And then the amount of level ups you get in the actual run is very little because the game has areas kind of like your traditional like beat 'em ups kind of.
Yeah.
Like you fly into this area and then it loads screens to the next area. Most of the time in that game, you are not required to kill anything. So you just fly through all the areas and then fight the boss. So leveling up in that game is horrible because you finish a stage and it's like, here's 4 EXP.
Does it really make a difference though?
The level ups or?
Yeah, I mean in like a speedrun context.
It would be nice if you could have them because some moves are locked behind it. And
okay.
There's sort of like a skill tree, which is a thing we can't use because of the 1 minute time loss.
Yeah.
Which is why IGT would have been really cool because you could actually open up the level up screen. But no, the level up screen. I even argued with Mike Soul that if we played the game on like normal mode instead of easy mode or something, we would probably be able to get a lot of EXP. Because fun fact, EXP is gained by mostly by hit count in that game, not like killing things.
Yeah.
The way it works is that you get a massive like multiplier based off how long your combo is going to EXP. So if you just like one-shot enemies like you do on easy mode, the EXP gained is like 1. But if you were to hit a 100 hit combo and then kill them, it gives like 4.
Okay.
So it's a lot more. Bosses work the same way, and so you would never get a 100 hit combo on a boss, but on normal you could, which would multiply the EXP like 4x. So that game's funny that way. But yeah, the only reason why you would want to is because there's I think it's an Uryu's tree. You can go from other characters' trees to other characters' trees by hitting certain level ups with them.
Yeah.
So the game will be like, if Uryu is level 5, then every character, then Ichigo can get into Uryu's tree. Like it opens the door between their trees.
So you
and other characters
can
use other characters.
You can use their upgrades.
Yeah, it's kind of the max level in that game is getting every upgrade on the entire board.
Yeah.
But their board isn't accessible until that character hits a certain level.
Strange.
And they interlock between each other. So sometimes it'll be like, oh, I can't get to Halabel's board unless I also get Stark to level 10. Then I can walk, like, Shinsei to Halabel's board into Stark's board. Like, it's dumb like that. So that's why that would be hard. But specifically, Ichigo is played a couple times in the run. In New Game, you don't get to pick your character of any sort. Technically, Story Mode never lets you pick your character. But specifically, Ichigo and Uryu. So in Uryu's tree on the right side of it, he has a support skill. Support skills are permanent passives.
Yeah.
But his is Chad Sato. And that ability says you can guard cancel any of your attacks. And so in the run, it would be very strong to be able to guard cancel.
Yeah.
Because you can be like square, 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 guard, square, 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 guard on every boss, and it soft locks all of them. And normally, ignition mode in that game gives you the ability to cancel anything with anything.
Yeah.
So like, if you activate ignition in that game, it gives you all the cancels that you could also get on your board. And most stages give you an ignition power-up before the boss. Like a full ignition power-up.
Yeah.
So you just fly and then break a crystal, grab it, and then fly into the boss arena. And then at a certain time in the boss fight, you pop it, and then you can do like whatever infinites you need to kill the boss. And you have a huge power up. And then you end the boss by activating the like ignition super, which usually does like 50% of the life and kills them. So like the run is pretty straightforward, but specifically in normal, it was thought like, well, if Uryu could fire 4 shots and then guard, and then 4 shots and then guard, he'd be an infinitely stronger character. And it would potentially save like a minute on a stage on normal mode. So it would be worth it kinda to open up the level up screen specifically after like Uryu's mission. Because then Uryu would probably be the level requirement for his door to open so that Ichigo could grab it for 2 of the missions. But the amount of EX souls or whatever green souls that you would need to get down to Sato and take it as Ichigo is a lot. So it's pretty weird. But it was like a thought process thing that I brought up. I was like, oh, this could save time. But like the way the run's currently played is like we just never enter the screen because it's like not worth it. It's sad, but I don't know. That game's cool, but I would love, and Mike Soul said this to me many times as well. It's like we would just love a new Bleach game, especially a hack and slash.
Yeah.
Bleach had a lot of games when it was popular.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of them were bad speedrun games.
My favorite one was the DS game, the one where it's like the fighting game, but you have like cards you can pick. I don't even remember what that game's called, but
I know what you mean though. A lot of them have weird names. Yeah, Bleach had great games. It had a couple great DS games. It was
a DS
a ton of PSP games. Yeah, ton of PSP games. A lot of the best games are PSP games.
Is that all like those Heat the Soul games and those ones?
All the Heat the Souls are on there, yeah. And then there's 2 Soul Carnival games that are on there. And then probably more. But yeah, Heat the Soul 1 through 7 were all PSP fighting games. They're pretty fine. They're not like the worst fighting game ever.